I got this package from eBay auctions for probably a little bit more than I should have spent on it, but I was really curious to see kind of if we could get this thing working again, and I'm really excited to open this up and start this project. I spent $40 for this Game Boy Color, and that's pretty expensive considering it's classified as a junk unit. I didn't pay any import on it, but the condition of this Game Boy was pretty rough. It doesn't have a battery door either, and unfortunately, it wasn't even turning on. I still think this Game Boy has a lot of life left to it, and I'm really interested to open this up and give it a go. So today I wanted to see if we can get this Game Boy started without any extra parts, and to see if we can repair some of the damages on the device itself. If I can make this look any better than what it looks like in the photos, I'll be pretty happy. First things first, let's open up this box and start the repair. The sellers seem to put an absurd amount of tape on here. Well, that wasn't too much trouble. Let's take a look inside. Looks like it's been wrapped pretty nice. Game Boy's been wrapped in this nice paper. Let's get it open. And this is absolutely filthy. If you look really closely, you can see quite a lot of dirt and grime. And there's quite a lot of corrosion on the battery terminals. This is really disappointing to see. I was kind of hoping that this wasn't going to be in this kind of condition. This one looks okay though. So the first thing I'm going to do is stick some batteries in this just to see if it starts up, but I'm not hopeful at this point. Let's grab some batteries and let's try this little trick where you just turn these a little round to get some of the corrosion off, and it doesn't start. So the interesting thing I'm seeing is that this power button is starting up ever so slightly for a second, and then it's disappearing. So I think what we should do now is just open this up, give this a deep clean, and see if that can get it working. Let's take these batteries out, and we got to get this open. It's pretty hard to see, but there is screws in the other ones, but this one has been taken out. The two tri-wings are also in the battery bay. So let's take these out and see what it looks like on the inside. I'm going to have to wash these screws off pretty good and try to scrub some of the rust off of them. These screws are pretty gross looking. Let's get the back off and see what it looks like on the inside. First look on the motherboard itself, it looks to be okay, but let's take a closer look. It almost looks like there's a little bit of corrosion on the CPU pins, and the power switch also looks pretty rough. My guess is they've opened this up and they've checked it, and then they've also marked the board. There's quite a lot of corrosion on the battery terminals, but it doesn't look like it's got onto the board at all. And there's a little bit on the bottom. The speaker also kind of looks gross too. I didn't try the headphone jack, but if it looks like this, I don't think it'll work. Let's get the screen disconnected next. Now we just have to take out the screws holding the board in place. There's 3 of them down at the bottom. And the one behind the battery terminals looks like it has quite a lot of corrosion on it. I'll probably end up replacing these screws with some new ones, but we can try to get this corrosion off. Okay, let's pull out the board next. It looks like there's quite a lot of corrosion on the A button, and there's some on the B as well. The D-pad looks to be fine, but I'll give that a good clean as well. But underneath the start and select, those look pretty clean too. I'm going to give this all a really good deep clean before we put it back together. However, looking at the top of the board, it appears to be in pretty good shape on this side. So the areas of concern are mostly the A and B buttons. The speaker needs to be cleaned out really good. I am also slightly concerned about these traces on the CPU pins. And the power switch is also slightly concerning. But let's just give this a good clean and see if we can get this started. First things first, I'm going to go over a lot of this board with a Q-tip. Hopefully this should be able to remove a lot of this corrosion, and you can just see how dirty this is. I'm not sure I can clean this corrosion off, but I'm going to try anyways. It's kind of coming off. I do think these are going to have to be resoldered with a new set. Next, I got to clean some of these traces up by the CPU. I think most of the issue lies with these battery terminals just because there's so much corrosion on them. If I can get this unit started though, I'm definitely going to be buying a new set of these to replace. Well, now that I got a little bit off with a Q-tip, I'm going to switch over to a toothbrush to try to get even more off. Another thing that I just noticed is the A button has a very large gash in it. This is due to corrosion over time, and it's pretty hard to get this out. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get this out, but I'm going to try my best. I think I got most of it. Still looking a little rough, but I think there should be enough to make contact there. Let's do a deep scrub on the top part. Let's get the cartridge slot cleaned out as well. I'm going to put something down so I don't get some of this battery corrosion on my filming area. And I think that's looking a little bit better, but there's still corrosion on there. Let's try to get a little bit more of that off. If you look really closely, there's also some corrosion at the bottom of the battery post. Before we put it back together, let's also clean out the speaker. I'll be surprised if this actually works. And you can see just how gross that speaker is. That is disgusting. Probably should be wearing gloves for this. I got a new Q-tip. Let's clean this out a little bit more. Looks like there's a lot of gunk centered around the middle. I don't know if this speaker is going to be salvageable. Looks like the magnet has some corrosion on it. I'm probably going to have to end up replacing the speaker. The speaker is the least of my concerns, as long as I get this unit powering on, I'll be pretty happy. Let's get one more Q-tip. I think that's about as good as it's going to get, but you can see some corrosion in the center. This is likely going to have to be changed. The back of the speaker isn't looking too good either. I'm also thinking about replacing this 3.5mm headphone jack because I couldn't get out this corrosion. I'm also wondering if someone tried resoldering this main CPU, as this does not look factory. I don't see any bridging of the traces near the CPU. I'm going to put a dab of rubbing alcohol into the power switch as well, just to clean it out, just to make sure it's getting some contact. Hopefully that should be okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is put this back together and just make sure that it works. I am slightly concerned about this power switch, and I'm still concerned about this corrosion on the battery terminal, but that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get. I am going to replace these down the road anyways, so I'm not too worried. I'm just trying to get this thing started. Moment of truth, let's put these batteries back in, and let's try powering it up. Absolutely incredible to see. So all we had to do was just clean it off, and we got a working Game Boy. The next thing I want to do is to clean up this Game Boy a bit, but you can see there's some pretty deep scratches on the screen. I should be able to salvage the shell, but unfortunately I will need a new screen lens. Let's also try a game cart in here just to see if that works. I'm just going to try my Japanese copy of the Pokemon trading card game to see if this works. And let's start it up. Oops. There we go. So it seems to load games absolutely fine. I've also just noticed that I forgot to put the start and select buttons back in, but that's okay. Yeah, so it works good. I'm going to take this shell apart, and we're going to give this a good clean. I also have to source some battery terminals and a 3.5mm headphone jack, but I am going to replace that speaker as well, just because the speaker looks so gross. I'm going to go get a little bowl of hot soapy water so we can clean these out. I did take out the other battery terminal, but it doesn't seem to be too bad. Stay tuned down the road when I swap these over. But for now, this should be good enough, and it's pretty clean. Let's take a quick look underneath these rubber membrane pads. These are going to have to be cleaned, so I'm going to put that in some hot soapy water. And I'll go ahead and take out the buttons as well. Let's take a look under the A and B one. You can tell this was very well used. Let's go ahead and take off the game cartridge plate. Since I'm going to be doing a shell swap on this, I'm not going to be removing the screen quite yet, but I'm going to do a good clean on here and remove these stickers. I'm going to clean up the back though the best I can. I'm going to start with the front panel since this is going to take the longest. I'm going to be very careful because I don't want to get the alcohol too close to the screen. The sticker actually came off a lot easier than I was expecting to. However, this Togepi one is definitely on there good. You know, all things considered, the shell's actually in pretty good shape. I do want to stay away from the screen, but I am going to clean out the bottom part here around the buttons. That's looking a lot cleaner. So I'm going to leave this to dry, and the front looks good too. In the meantime, let's go ahead and clean out the bottom part. I'm probably going to have to use some rubbing alcohol to clean off this name. Hopefully that comes off. And there we go. So I'm going to set this out to dry, but we can go ahead and clean the rest of the other parts now. And these face buttons look usable again as well. I'm going to go give these a quick rinse next. I'm going to use a Q-tip with some rubbing alcohol to try to get this name off. Then I'm going to leave it out to dry and we can put it back together. A little bit of the contact has been worn away from the silk screen. There's still quite a lot of connection, so I hope it should work. I've got everything clean, so let's just put it back together and see how it works. Let's go ahead and start putting everything back in. The start and select rubber membrane can go in next, then the rubber membranes for the other buttons. I think that already looks way better. Let's plug in the screen next. Just gonna push it in, then push down the locks. I gotta make sure that lines in good. And I'm gonna put these screws back in. Now the board is down, so we don't have to worry about it moving around. We can put the power button cover on and the IR shield. Now we just have to get the other two screws in. There's one behind the battery bay and there's one here. The 4 screws in the game back plate come next. Now we can go ahead and put that battery terminal back in. That just drops into place. Just before I close up the back, I just wanted to show kind of the extent of the corrosion even after cleaning. So you can see those battery terminals do have quite a lot of corrosion on them, but it's not affecting the board. I got off as much as I could, but these are going to be swapped out, so don't worry too much about it. Even after cleaning, the headphone jack also has quite a lot of corrosion, so I am going to be swapping that out as well, and the speaker too. All 3 of those parts desperately need to be changed. The back of the shell cleaned up really nicely, and I'm actually quite happy with how this turned out. There was a lot of gunk on the sides near the seam itself and around a lot of the openings, as well as near around the screws, but I managed to get all this cleaned out and I think it looks pretty nice. There's a little bit of black near where the Sharpie was, but you can tell that had been written on there for quite a while. And overall, I'm pretty happy with it. Let's get that put together. Let's get all these screws in there. So I did put the extra screw back up top, and the 2 are in the sides, but I did not put the one over here. I want the top to be nicely tightly closed, so overall I do think this looks really nice. I do think that this yellow shell is in really good condition, and I'm still going to be keeping this even after I swap the shell out. This cleaned up really nice. And the side that has the power switch looks really good too. So the speaker isn't working. I was pretty sure it wasn't gonna because it looks absolutely terrible. But it starts up every time now, so I'm really happy. The start button and select button works. The B button works right away. And the A button works too. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I do need to swap out that speaker. The shell is going to be swapped, and I'm going to put a new screen lens on there too, and it's going to be glass this time. We are also missing that battery bay, but that's going to come with the new shell. But yeah, quite happy with how this turned out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Obviously, these prices aren't what we were used to. I used to be able to get these for $20 to $40 Canadian, but now I had to spend up to $50 to $60 to get one of these. And I think that's just because the big retro gaming boom right now that we're in. But if you have any questions, make sure to ask in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and as always, thanks for watching.